coffee consumers and crime connoisseurs. Welcome to the 20th episode of Mugshot Mornings, where we explore true crime one sip at a time. Today's episode, we will be discussing Grady Stiles, also known as the Lobster Boy. Now, this is not to be confused with the Lobster Man. That's his father. Grady Stiles was a well-known figure in the circus world, born with a rare condition that left him with extremely short arms and legs. Despite his physical challenges, he became famous for his strength and his role in the freak show. But behind the scenes, Grady's life was far from the spectacle he portrayed. He was a man who ruled through violence and intimidation, leaving a trail of broken relationships and fractured lives in his wake. When a series of tragic events came to a head, Grady's family had to confront an impossible choice. Would they stay in the grip of his abuse or find a way out, no matter the cost? But as always, before we get into today's video, again, another elephant in the room. I lost my voice. I am just now kind of getting it back. If you watched last week's episode, I had a cold. Turns out it was possibly strep. I lost my voice completely. I'm going to insert like a sound of me talking here. I lost my voice. And now I finally know what I sound like. I've been trying to figure it out, but now I know.
Got your degree, and you know every fucking thing.
Yeah, that sucked. Like, and I'm just now getting my voice back. Like, I'm probably gonna break a few times, but I have this, like, nasally rasp going on. So if it's sexy, you're welcome. So before we get into today's story, like I said, elephant in the room, I lost my voice. It should be back next week. I do want to go ahead and just kind of say that the week of Christmas, I'm not going to be posting. I'm going to be really busy that week. So that's in 2 weeks. So just prepare for that. I'm not going to post that week, but I will be back to normal, and it'll be at the beginning of January, so it'll be on January 2nd. I'm still going to post next week, but, just prepare for that. Like I said, for anybody that's new here, my name is Sydney. I'm going to start saying this because I don't think I've really said it since the first episode, really. But I am combining coffee and true crime, which is how we got Mugshot Mornings, the podcast name. And so we do something called Coffee Talk. I know that it is basically like unfiltered with Zane and Heath. They say Coffee Talk, but this is just what I call it, just with updates and everything while I sip coffee. So I'm not trying to take anything from them or anything like that. I promise. So last week, I was editing and I didn't even say it. I made a hot coffee and I just said I had a hot coffee. Like, that was so different. I don't drink hot coffee. Like, it could be 8 degrees outside and I'm gonna drink an iced coffee. I don't like hot coffee, but I had one last week and I really liked it. This time I made my own latte. I have never made a hot latte. I used my steamer on my espresso machine to steam oat milk. I don't know if I did it correctly, but I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to try it here with you guys. As if, like, this is a new experience. This is literally so stupid, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue doing it anyways. Okay. What was I about to say? I was about to say something really stupid, but I'm not gonna. Oh my god, that isn't bad for my first time. Hey, I actually really like that. I just made a normal latte with some steamed, and I also used my little, like, $4 from TJ Maxx milk frother, too. I don't know if you can kind of see it. Literally not at all. Ew, I'm scared I'm just gonna dump it all over my computer, but I'm never gonna be able to learn how to do latte art because you have to use regular milk. I'm just not trying to be pooping everywhere. I also have really bad skin, so I'm just not trying to have that either. So, cheers. Yeah, that shit's fire. I did a good job. So today's story is kind of different, and I know I just kind of did one about a carnival-styled video a couple weeks ago. I first learned this case from Eleanor Neal here on YouTube, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the way she told this story. It's kind of another shorter video that I have, another short episode. You know, some of these older cases, it's a lot harder to find a lot of information if they weren't super well known, which is a problem that I had a couple of weeks ago when I tried to do one of the Ted Bundy case. I told you guys that I didn't get to post that week because I absolutely hated the research for that. When I sat down to film, it was literally like 18 minutes long. I didn't have enough story. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the story at all. So we're just going to get into it. I'm not doing sip and solve anymore. It didn't get the traction that I thought that it would. So we're not going to do that. I'll think of another segment that's a little bit easier to do. So yeah. If y'all are looking for sip and solve, I'm not doing that anymore. So we're going to go ahead and get into today's story. So grab your coffee and get ready and buckle in because this one is wild. This story begins in the small town of Gibsonton, Florida in the 1900s. Known for its welcoming atmosphere, Gibsonton became popular with entertainers and performers, specifically freak show performers. Gibsonton was a refuge for these performers because it was an accepting, low-judgment town. Back then, people with deformities faced harsh prejudice, and even today, people are still judged with their differences. But in Gibsonton, things were different. The town's welcoming spirit can largely be credited to two retired circus performers, Al and Jeannie. Al was an 8-foot-tall man, and his wife Jeannie was just 2.5 feet tall. They moved to Gibsonton, started a fishing club, and wanted nothing more than to retire in peace. Their friendliness and openness helped shape the town's reputation as an accepting place for people with unique appearances. As other performers heard about Gibsonton's warm community, many chose to retire there too. The town's accommodations reflected its inclusivity, such as installing a lower desk at the post office for people with dwarfism and passing laws that allowed residents to keep elephants and other animals on their property. Among Gibsonton's residents was Emmett, also known as Alligator Man, who had an ichthyosis condition, causing his skin to build up in thick, scaly layers. Another notable resident was Priscilla, the monkey girl, who had an excessive hair growth all over her body and performed with a monkey that resembled her. Priscilla and Emmett, who had met in the circus, eventually eloped and moved to Gibsonton to settle down. Other famous figures in Gibsonton included a man who played a munchkin in The Wizard of Oz, and Grace McDaniels, known as the mule-faced woman due to a facial deformity caused by Sturge-Weber syndrome. But as the most infamous family in Gibsonton was the Stiles family, also known as the Lobster family. Grady Franklin Stiles Jr. was born on June 26, 1937, and was the fifth in a long line of lobster boys, each born with hetrodactyly, a genetic condition that causes the fusion of fingers and toes, resulting in limbs that resemble lobster claws. Grady was born with the condition affecting all 4 of his limbs. His hands were deformed, with conjoined fingers and a missing middle finger, and his feet were fused, making it impossible for him to walk. As a result, Grady spent most of his life in a wheelchair, but he learned to maneuver using his arms, developing surprising strength. Grady's father also had hetrodactyly, though it only affected his hands, which allowed him to be able to walk and work. He could get a job, but when Grady Jr. was born with more severe deformities, he feared his own son wouldn't be able to support himself. Grady had 2 sisters, one of whom was born without the condition, as hetrodactyly can skip generations. Grady Stiles Jr., known to the world as Lobster Boy, grew up as one of the many sideshow performers in carnivals, where people would come to gawk at his deformity, sometimes in awe and other times in cruelty. Though the audience's reactions may have been harsh, Grady didn't concern himself with the opinions of others. He was there to put on a show. His deformity, while limiting his mobility, also made him strong. Despite his disability, he became a powerful man, using his arms to navigate and interact with the world. One of Grady's sisters was born without hetrodactyly, while his other sister was born with it in just 1 foot. When she was born, her parents made the difficult decision to amputate the affected foot and fit her with a prosthetic one, which might seem dramatic, but it did make sense. Without the amputation, she wouldn't have been able to walk properly, so it was a practical solution to give her a better chance at mobility. Grady, on the other hand, was affected in all 4 limbs, which made his life significantly more difficult. Growing up in a rough area of Pittsburgh, Grady faced severe bullying because of his condition, not only for his deformities, but also because of his father's similar condition. His father, concerned about his son's future and quality of life, feared that Grady wouldn't be able to take care of himself, hold a job, or do basic tasks. So to help his son, Grady's father decided to take a unique approach. He and Grady joined a freak show, where performing just a few nights a week would provide them with accommodation and income. This also gave Grady a chance to escape the bullying, offering him a safer and more supportive community of people who understood his struggles. The family moved from Pittsburgh to Gibsonton, Florida, where they joined a traveling circus. Grady's father became known as the Lobster Man, as Grady Jr., who was just 7 years old at the time, was known as the Lobster Boy. He quickly thrived in the circus, becoming the headliner and local celebrity in the Florida area. He was enjoying the attention he was receiving, especially from the girls, and formed strong bonds with his fellow performers, and it became like a second family. They helped him learn to write, as his deformities made it difficult for him to hold a pen, and he developed remarkable upper body strength, which was essential, again, because he couldn't walk. His circus friends also introduced him to sports like basketball, which he could play in his wheelchair, and even taught him how to shoot a gun. In his late teens, Grady met Maria Teresa, a 17-year-old who had run away to join the circus to escape her abusive stepfather. Unlike Grady, Maria was not a performer. She started off as a ticket sales girl doing odd jobs. But as they spent more time together, Maria began to fall for Grady, though he initially was not interested. He was a circus celebrity and could have any girl that he wanted, so he did not pay much attention to her at first. Over time, Maria wore him down, and eventually, Grady began to notice her and he fell in love. The two started a relationship, and Grady helped Maria climb the ranks within the circus. She started as a ticket sales girl, but eventually became a magician's assistant, and later, an act called the Electrified Girl. In this act, she would be strapped to an electric chair, where they would pretend to electrocute her. Now, it's unclear if this act really did involve real electricity, but she would lift her hand from the chair and sparks would appear to come from her fingers. Grady and Maria married in 1958, but their happiness did not last long. Grady started drinking and eventually became an alcoholic. When drunk, he became a completely different person. He was violent, very aggressive, and mean. Even when sober, Grady had a short temper, likely stemming from the years of bullying and feeling underestimated due to his disability. His anger management issues were amplified when he drank, and because of his incredible upper body strength, his violent outbursts were especially brutal. He would use his lobster claw hands to beat Maria, which caused far more pain than a regular fist could, and he even used them to strangle her. Despite the abuse, Maria tried to make their marriage work, knowing the man she fell in love with was still in there before the alcoholism. They had a daughter, but she tragically died of pneumonia shortly after birth. The conditions in the circus were harsh, with cold accommodations that were not suitable for a newborn. Their third child, Donna, was the first to survive infancy and did not have ectrodactyly, but their fourth child, Kathy, did inherit Grady's condition. Grady favored Kathy because she did share his deformity, and many people believed it was because he felt a stronger connection to her. He was abusive to everyone in the home, but Donna and Maria were the main ones that he targeted because he did favor Kathy, and it was mostly whenever he was drunk. Nearly 15 years into their marriage, Maria finally found the courage to leave Grady, taking the children with her. However, she was unfamiliar with the court system, and during the custody hearings, Grady showed up, and as their father, was granted custody of the children. Donna and Kathy were taken from Maria and given to Grady. Maria eventually remarried another circus performer, Harry Newman. Harry was also a freak show performer, and he was famous for his act as the human blockhead, where he would hammer nails into his nose. However, their marriage did not last, and Maria went on to stay in Gibsonton. While Grady remarried another woman named Barbara, They also had a son that they named Grady, who had ectrodactyly just like his father and his grandfather. Grady saw an opportunity to expand the act with his children and performed the Lobster family. Kathy and his other son, Grady Jr. II, both with the same condition, joined him in the circus. When they weren't performing, Grady would force them to wear gloves in public, wanting to protect the family's image and ensure that people pay to see their unique condition rather than seeing it for free. By the time Grady was in his late 30s or early 40s, he retired from performing in the freak show, though his children continued to perform. He still traveled with the circus as a manager, but no longer performed himself. Around this time, Donna, the daughter without ectrodactyly, ran away from the home at age 15. She had many years of abuse from her father, and she knew that he would never accept the relationship with her boyfriend. So she ran away to be with her boyfriend, but after 2 years of being gone, Donna had built a new life away from her father's violence and control, and she was happy, and she was doing really well. Now at this point in the story, there are rumors that Grady Stiles tried to find his daughter Donna after she ran away, possibly hiring a private investigator. The truth of these rumors are not clear, but when Donna was 17, she and her boyfriend were planning to get married. Some sources claim that Donna was pregnant at the time, while others suggest that she lied about being pregnant to pressure her father into allowing her to marry, as underage marriage required parental consent. Donna reached out to Grady, informing him of her plans and asking for his approval to marry her boyfriend. Grady agreed to meet her and her fiance. Now, the details of what happened next are not super clear again, but at some point, Donna and her family were gathered in one room while Grady and Donna's boyfriend were elsewhere. A confrontation between Grady and his daughter's fiance escalated, and Donna heard loud gunshots. She panicked and she ran towards the sound and found her fiance lying on the floor in a pool of blood. He had been shot twice in the chest and was dead. Grady stood nearby, holding a gun, staring at his daughter. He reportedly said, "Better him than me." Grady did admit to killing the young man, claiming that it was a result of an argument where he felt overpowered by the 17-year-old, who was physically able, while Grady had his disability. There was a rare moment where Grady used his disability as an excuse, something he usually avoided doing. His defense focused on self-defense in the trial, claiming that he feared for his life and he was unable to defend himself due to his physical limitations. The jury convicted him of third-degree murder, believing that the killing was not premeditated, but Grady's disability and his medical issues, such as lung and liver problems from drinking, meant that he was sentenced to house arrest instead of prison. He served 15 years of house arrest and probation, but he never spent a day in jail. Grady's conviction and lack of prison time gave him a sense of invincibility. He became even more aggressive and confident, believing that if he could avoid prison time, that there would be no consequences for anything. After this, his marriage to Barbara ended and he tried to create his own freak show with his children, but it failed. He eventually moved back to Gibsonton, where he reconnected with his first wife, Maria, and they remarried. Grady had stopped drinking due to his house arrest and probation, and Maria believed that he had changed. However, shortly after remarrying, Grady's violence returned and he began abusing Maria, his children, and even his grandchildren. He would even say things like, "I've killed once and I can kill again," signaling that he was willing to resort to murder again if he needed to. Now, this story does take a dark turn when one night, Grady Stiles Jr., now remarried to Maria, became violent again. This time, his daughter Kathy, who was 7 months pregnant, tried to intervene while Grady was beating her mother. Instead of stopping, Grady began to beat Kathy, causing her trauma severe enough to bring on early labor. Fortunately, both Kathy and her baby survived. This incident, with the years of abuse, pushed Maria to an absolute breaking point. In November 1992, after Grady made a chilling threat that he was going to kill her, Maria talked to her son Harry about her fear that her husband would eventually murder her. Harry is the son that she had with her second husband, Harry, that was a part of the circus, by the way. That was not mentioned earlier, so that's my bad. Harry knew that there needed to be a way to protect his mother, and he realized that the only way to stop Grady was that he was going to have to kill him first. Harry was not willing to commit the murder himself, though. He turned to a 17-year-old Chris Wyant, a circus worker with a criminal history, to hire him as a hitman. After giving Chris $1,500, Maria and Harry set up a plan. They left the mobile home on the night of November 29th, 1992, telling Grady they were going to a relative's house, leaving him alone in the home. Chris entered the house and shot Grady 3 times in the head while he sat in his chair watching TV. Chris admitted to the crime, but when questioned, he didn't try to hide his involvement. He was sentenced to 27 years in prison for second-degree murder. Maria tried to argue that self-defense in her trial, claiming that she feared Grady would eventually kill her. However, because Grady was unarmed and sitting peacefully in his chair when he was killed, the court ruled that her actions were unprovoked, and she was found guilty of manslaughter. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison, although she was released in 2000. Harry, who was considered the mastermind behind the plan, was sentenced to life in prison for the first-degree murder, but he passed away in prison in 2014. In 2009, Chris was released from prison. Maria moved back to Gibsonton once she was released, but she wasn't really welcomed by many people in the community. A lot of people who knew and loved Grady didn't want her back because of the overall story of her killing her husband, but many people actually justified her actions because of the years of abuse that had spread around town. In a later twist, Grady's son, also named Grady, who was Grady Jr. the second, he defended publicly for his mom and his stepbrother, claiming that Chris had taken it upon himself to kill Grady out of sympathy for his family, and that Maria and Harry had not orchestrated the murder. However, the courts had already ruled that they were responsible for hiring Chris to kill Grady. In the end, Grady Stiles, the Lobster boy, was buried with little fans. A lot of people did mourn him, this abuser, but they mourned the guy that they knew that brought them a lot of joy when they would see him at the circus. There was little to no people that attended his funeral. I also read that there was no one there to even be his pallbearers. So it seemed like there was a lot of mixed opinions about Mr. Grady Stiles Jr.'s death. Now, Maria, at the time of filming this, is alive and she is living in Florida. Like I said, Harry passed in 2014 before he was released. Chris, who shot the gun, was released in 2009. I don't really think that $1,500 is a lot of money to kill someone. I don't think that's a good amount as a hitman. I don't really think any amount is enough to kill a person. Let me back up a little bit. But that's not a lot of money. To kill someone. So after reading this and doing, pretty much all of the articles that I read said the same thing. Grady Stiles Jr. was abusive. So her name is Maria, but I also see a lot of articles say Mary. So she went by both. So if y'all listen to anything and they say Mary, I have a lot of articles that say Mary and some articles say Maria. I typed Maria at first and then I just continued going on with it. So how do we feel about today's story? I know that my voice cracked a few times, but I was on a roll and I hadn't even messed up a few times, so I was like, I'm not gonna stop. My voice is telling me to give it a break. Because after I lost my voice last week, I didn't even take a rest, and my voice isn't even fully back. But I wanted to get an episode out to you guys. So this was a short one. This one was a crazy one because I don't know how I feel about this case, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know if y'all have anything that y'all found that maybe I skipped and I didn't add in here that you think is really relevant to the case. Let me know if you think that his murder was justified because of how abusive it was and she didn't see any way out. My thing is, I think she had a way out because she was already not married to him. She remarried her abuser. I don't really feel any sympathy for her. because you were out. Maybe it was just like the money and, you know, kind of the attention because he was well known in the community. I don't know, sis. Okay, well, I appreciate you guys so much for listening and tuning in. Be sure, if you're on YouTube, to like, subscribe, and tell your friends. And if you're on audio only for the podcast listeners, with Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, be sure to rate and review and share it, download the episode, everything. And yeah. Thank you so much for listening, as always, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.